Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, May 13th Special City Council meeting. That's D. Stiles Elliott. Will you please call roll?
Mayor Benjamin.
Present.
Councilmember DeLira.
Here.
Councilmember Fajarin.
Here.
Councilmember Gaither.
Here.
Councilmember Guido. Here. Councilmember Parks. Councilmember Weller.
Present.
Councilmember Wright.
Here.
Councilmember Parks requests to be excused to this meeting. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That passes. On to mayor community announcements. I know it may seem a little bit time off, but Memorial Day is coming up, and with that, we have a number of administrative offices that will be closed. So Pullman City Hall, Pullman Recreation Center, Pullman Aquatic Center, Neal Public Library, and other Pullman administrative offices will be closed for Memorial Day on Monday, May 26th. Emergency services will remain open. For the irrigation schedule, Pullman's outdoor irrigation season starts on June 1st and runs through September 30th. Residents with even addresses can water before 10 a.m. or after 6 p.m. on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Odd addresses can water on Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. The schedule only applies to irrigation and unattended sprinkler watering. Handheld watering is always allowed. Related to elections, thank you for everyone who's expressed interest in the upcoming City Council elections and have filed to run. While it's not appropriate for any of us to endorse or campaign for anyone during a meeting, I appreciate everyone who wants to be involved in public service. The city will be putting out information related to proper placement of campaign signs, and also for those who desire to know more about the various city departments, the city will later this summer be doing city tours. More information will be forward on that. And for those that missed out on the opportunity to run for council but would like to get involved in the city, we do have a number of boards, commissions, and committees that are open. These are volunteer positions in the areas of Arts Commission, Cemetery Committee, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee, Historic Preservation Commission, and the Library Board of Trustees. You can go to pullman-wa.gov/government for more information and to apply. And in addition, the Civil Service Commission is also currently recruiting for an independent contractor for the Secretary and the Chief Examiner. This is a paid position, and applicants must live in Pullman. For more information on that, you go to pullman-wa.gov/jobs. Related to Parks and Recreation, the summer swim sale is on, so spend all summer swimming at Rainy Park for one great price. The 2025 early bird sale ends on Tuesday, June 3rd, and the Rainy Park pool opens on Saturday, June 14th. You can go to PullmanParksandRec.com to buy your passes. And the Pullman Parks and Recreation and Whitman County Public Health are partnering to provide free swim lessons for eligible Whitman County children through the Care to Share program. If you qualify if your child or household receives free school lunch, WIC, Medicaid, or other assistance programs. You can apply online at PullmanParksandRecreation.com or in person at the Pullman Recreation Center. Neal Public Library. The Neal Public Library will be closed this Friday and Saturday. That's May 16th and 17th to replace the library management software. This is 20 years in the making. The library's online catalog will not be available during this time, and no items will be due during these days. Libby eBooks and Autobook access and Canopy streaming services will still be available during this time. And if you want to see more community events, please visit the city's tourism page at visit-pullman.com/events. The last item that I have is related to interim city administrator. So Finance and Administrative Services Director Jeff Albrecht will serve as the interim city administrator while the city searches for a new city administrator. He began this role yesterday, May 12th. Recreation Manager Megan Vining, who's been serving as acting city administrator for the last 7 weeks, was asked to continue as the interim city administrator, but has respectfully declined. Summer is the busiest time for Parks and Rec, and she didn't want to compromise the leadership required in either position. And she really, her heart was there and wanted to get back in that area, and I appreciate that. She'll be working with me and Jeff and the administrative team to facilitate the smoothest possible transition leadership over the coming weeks. The city administrator position will be posted soon at pullman-wa.gov/jobs. The next item up in the agenda is non-agenda related community comments. This agenda item is the first of 2 opportunities during this meeting for the public to bring comments to the attention of the elected officials. Specifically, this item is reserved for public comments, concerns, or other information not related to a previous public hearing or final action on this agenda. Final action items include confirmation of appointments, consent agenda items, and regular agenda items. This agenda item for comments will not exceed 30 minutes in total. Comments to be directed to the mayor or the city council as a body. No comment should be directed to an individual council member. Is there anyone at this time that would like to provide a non-agenda item related comment? If so, please come forward to the podium.
Good evening, Bobby Ryder with the Downtown Pullman Association. I just wanted to let the public know about an upcoming event on March 17th, this Saturday, from 3 to 6. We will have the Art Walk in downtown. It will begin at the Greystone Gallery. You can pick up your map and the participating businesses and artists at the Greystone Gallery. We have 17 participating businesses and 24 artists. There will be 2 walking tours. One is a historic buildings walking tour that starts in Pine Street Plaza, which will be led by Joe Astorino. And he's a PhD who teaches sociology at WSU. It should be an interesting tour, and information about this will be available on the DPA website under events. Also, a self-guided mural walking tour has been prepared by DPA, and you can pick up a map of the mural walking tour as you begin your art walk at the Greystone Gallery when the art walk begins. So, other news is that the T-Mobile grant is completed. Banners have been purchased and approved, and lights will be delivered to the city maintenance shop tomorrow. And a few more tables and chairs have been ordered to help businesses attract people to their shops and restaurants. We also have hired 2 students. One is Tyler Lackman, a student majoring in data analytics, and he continues to populate fields and clean our data so that we can better understand our story of what's happening downtown. And then Leanne Livingston is a graduate in landscape architecture, and she is managing our business and occupation tax program fundraising campaign, and she brings strong design and administrative skills to our office. So we're excited to have them both. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to provide public comment on non-agenda items? Seeing none, we'll close that. Next item is city council member comments, and I'll start with the council member Fajarin.
I know it's been mentioned already, but we asked folks to put their actions into words last week for filing for office, and Pullman showed up. In my 18 years, I've never seen so many filers. So I just want to thank everybody who put their name out there. We know it's not easy. I've done it plenty of times, failed plenty of times before I eventually got elected. And so I just want to personally thank you. And feel free to reach out to me, not on my work email or city council email, but I'm available for any insights on time commitments or what it takes to be on city council. So just thank you.
Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. And I would echo the comments of my fellow council member. It's just great to have the level of interest that we have in these positions. And so good luck to you all. And I do the same. Please reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions or, discuss any item that you think is worthy of talking about. So I welcome that. Thank you.
Councilmember Guido.
I'll go ahead and repeat what has been said. Appreciate how much people have turned out and expressed their interest in running, and I too am available. If you have any questions or concerns, I'm happy to talk to you.
Councilmember Weller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually have two things. I'll try and keep them short. Of course, available if anybody wants to meet and talk. First one is going to deal with fireworks. Okay. Before I continue, I want to make perfectly clear I am not suggesting banning fireworks. I've already heard that plenty. I want us to be able to follow our codes, one of which is only allowing fireworks, consumer fireworks, to be discharged between the hours of 9 a.m. and 11 p.m. on July 3rd and between the hours of 9 a.m. and midnight on July 4th and between the hours of 6 p.m. on December 31st and 1 a.m. on January 1st. Thank you, Thad. January 1st, right? Did I say that right? Okay. All right. I'm looking at you there, Vicki. All right. Thank you. I've been really frustrated and disappointed that since 2012, fireworks have been allowed at WSU baseball games and most recently at football games. Previous discussions with our past police chief Jenkins, whom I greatly admire, explained that WSU is required to apply for a noise variance and permit for fireworks displays, and that had been allowed back in 2012. Since that time, we have had some years where fireworks would be used almost every baseball game. My further concern is that this will now be the case for some football games. I am completely supportive of our WSU athletics. And when I went to school, we had plenty of celebrations without the use of fireworks. These displays happen with no apparent warning other than a small excerpt at WSU or PSA to the surrounding community and seem to be amplified by the hills and shake the windows, even of my apartment, which is a half-mile away. I have heard from fellow Ward 2 community members that they have been woken up to children crying, dogs scared and running away, and they have to be up in the morning for work. In addition, it affects those with sensory issues and others suffering from PTSD. This has happened year after year after year with no solution in sight. And I feel like we need one because it is a nuisance, disruptive and alarming and without warning. Not to mention, certain years, quite frequent, almost to every week. Lastly, it is my sincere belief that these city-approved fireworks causes others to feel it is okay to use personal fireworks as well, because WSU is doing it. I don't know the stats on the amount of phone calls or fireworks reported, but I feel it is increasing. I could be wrong. It might not be experienced by all of Pullman, but it is definitely disruptive at 9 or sometimes 10 at night for many of us. I would like to suggest, I will keep the suggestion for later, and this is my second comment. Apologize, Mr. Mayor. Okay. Community frustrations. All right. The last few years have been very challenging. With the loss of business, low enrollment at WSU, a struggling economy, angry community, and difficult decisions for all of us where every answer and vote seems to be the wrong one. I'm not under any illusion of what we are facing in our city, and I don't believe anyone in this room or out of it are either. It sucks right now. It's frustrating, it's disappointing. I'm disappointed about a number of things. We have many challenges, and I am, as was already spoken, energized to see how many people are engaged and wanting to serve our Pullman community. However, when the new council members take their seats, we will likely still have those challenges. We need to address some things before that time, And so I would encourage another topic for us to discuss at a future meeting. We need to talk, take a difficult and raw look at our challenges. I don't usually like to call them problems, but in this instance, I will. We need to lay it all out on the table. What are we as a community facing right now? And what can be done? This needs to be a community-wide effort, not just us on the dais or in government, but the entire community. At this point, there are so many different accusations and rumors, animosity, and anger out there that it is difficult to separate out what are the core problems. I am not saying I have solutions. I am saying we need to come up with a group, advisory task force, whatever, made up of community members, leaders, representing different groups, businesses, to listen non-judgmentally, without ego or pride. That's really tough for me. Or defensiveness, and begin working through the complaints and problems. I believe these need to be shared openly so that there is transparency, and then we begin the work of determining what is within our power to change, the low-hanging fruit, and others that we don't know if we can change with our current resources. There are things that are beyond our control, such as state and federal regulations, but we should still identify those barriers, and perhaps we can find a way forward with our state and federal representatives and departments. There are also things that we currently are doing and work in progress, which should be shared so that it can be clear. I could see a portion of our website dedicated to problem solving so that people can clearly see the problems and progress and barriers. Now, please keep in mind that I don't have any solutions up here. This isn't a visioning for the future or some grand plan. It is an effort to identify the cracks in our foundation, to go through the emotion, clearly state what we are currently doing, what can be done, what we think and don't know can be done, and what clearly is beyond our current capacity or powers. If the council agrees, I feel we should begin the discussion and planning as a future topic to repair the foundation of our Pullman home. So.
Councilmember DeLira.
I just want to echo what everyone else has said about filing. Thank you all for putting your name on the ballot for primaries and general elections. And as everyone else has said, if you would like to talk to me about what it's like to be a council member, more than happy to.
Councilmember Gaither.
No comment. And I am available, but no comment.
Next item is City Council future agenda request. Is there anyone who has a future agenda request? Councilmember DeLira.
Yeah, so I would like to request an agenda item for the next June 10th council meeting to talk about a potential opportunity to tangibly support the Colfax, Albion, Pullman, Moscow transportation routes being sought after by Coast. We have the opportunity to pitch in a one-time contribution of $5K to not only help assist Coast efforts from our end, but also incentivize Avista, who pledges to contribute $5K as well if both City of Pullman and City of Moscow pledge $5K each. So Moscow City Council has already stated their commitment to pledge $5K, and this is also an urgent matter, so I would like to know what other council members think about this in terms of having a discussion at our earliest opportunity that we can get. And on top of that, while we have our financial update today, I hope we keep this $5K in mind when we are digesting that presentation. So hoping for a second.
So this request would require a second. Is there someone that would second this?
Second.
Second.
We have a second, okay. So we'll look to put it on the June 10th if we can get everything together for it, and so for that. Councilmember Weller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as I already alluded to, I believe that, do you want me to do them separate? Mr.
They need to
Mayor?
be, yeah, they're two
Okay.
separate.
So the first one would be a discussion on fireworks. Like to discuss at a future meeting to get to the bottom of what is allowed as far as firework display, and discuss with Thad about how we can navigate this, especially with WSU's permission and so on and so forth. So that would be my
So this be a
suggestion.
discussion item related to fireworks, and what are the options that, as a city council, that we have?
Yes.
With that, is there a second with that?
Second.
Second, okay. And then Councilmember Weller again?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The second one is somewhat nebulous, as you heard, because it was only after discussing with quite a few people today, is some discussion around creating a problem-solving group, identifying group, be able to discuss these things in a way so that we can get to the bottom of what we are all facing, what the community members are explaining to us, but then also what can we do beyond all the emotions and everything like that. And it's community members, businesses, other leaders in the community. So I think we need to be able to be vulnerable to a certain point and really flesh these things out. So it's nebulous, I
And-
know.
So I hear a request for a discussion item around the current community problems, and then from there,
That's great, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I
Okay.
like that. Okay.
is there a second related to that? I'm not,
I would, point of information, I would just probably like a little bit more detail of what Councilmember Weller has in terms of this working group, because I would be supportive of if it's just a working group on council, so we're not asking staff to donate any more of their precious time. I'm more than willing to spend my time on that, but I do have concerns with asking staff to do more. And then as well as the community has comment periods. We've been hearing about it from multiple, we hear about these issues. We're not aware of these issues. I feel like maybe the answer is showing what we're doing in order to overcome some of these issues might be the problem, but I'm willing to hear more about what Councilmember Weller has in terms of this working group.
Okay,
So-
I will try to explain, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Should I try and explain a little bit more?
well, let me just ask, Councilmember Delera, do you have a
Yeah, I think I would also be more supportive if I can kind of grasp what the goal is. It sounds like the goal of the discussion would be to talk about what the working group will accomplish and who will make up the people who are in that work group.
Yeah, no, I can understand both of the confusion, and as I was trying to, it's okay for me to respond to these questions?
If you'd like, or, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, if you have an answer, great. If not, you can always come back at a future time with it more solidified.
I think it'd be more timely for us to try and be able to deal with this sooner rather than later. I think we have an erosion of trust. We have we know what we do up here. We know how hard staff works. We know how hard what we all do to try and meet expectations. And I think we all know, it can be frustrating, but it's even more frustrating for people who are not in the know. People who are in the community, businesses who have been feeling the crunch, community members who have expressed, and we've all read it, transparency, frustration, economic. We need to be able to try to, and this is just my fleshing through in my own mind. We need to meet this head on. I think many people understand I try to be as good of a city cheerleader as I possibly can. But there's a certain frustration level that we need to start diving into. Maybe that's more transparency. Maybe that's putting it out more on the website. Loss of businesses. What are we doing to retain businesses? We have presentations from Sean that was really great. But do we have somewhere somebody can say, hey, look, what are you doing about the loss of businesses? This is what we are doing, each and everything.
Okay, once again, it's
Okay.
a discussion around a
Problem solving.
community problem solving group. And is there a second?
Just for the sake of having the discussion, I do feel like I will second that
Okay.
motion.
Then we will put it on a future agenda item. Okay. Is there anyone else who has any future agenda requests? Seeing none, we move on to community comments on final action items on the agenda. This agenda item is the second of two opportunities during this meeting for the public to bring comments to the attention of elected officials on any agenda item on the City Council. Will take final action item at this meeting. This excludes items where public comment was previously accepted. And we do have two items on the agenda where we previously had public comment, and so those are not ones that you could provide public comment. That's agenda item number 3 and agenda item number 4 that is related to the zoning ordinance amendment. So those are two that we've previously taken public comment, and so we're not allowed to, by state law, be able to take additional public comment on that. So this exclusion extends to prior public hearings. Final action items include confirmation of appointments, consent agenda items, and regular agenda items. This agenda item for comments will not exceed 30 minutes in total. Comments to be directed to the mayor, the city council as a body. No comments should be directed to the individual council member. Is there anyone who would like to provide community comments on final action items with the exception of the items 3 and 4 of the regular agenda? 3 and 4. I'm sorry, 3 and 4. Seeing none.
Just point of clarification, I think we just needs to be reiterated, just so my understanding, because we had a public hearing for the items 2 and 3, the public is not allowed for
3
public
and 4,
comment.
right.
Sorry, 3,
Yeah.
I apologize.
No, you're in that too now.
For 3 or 4, the public is not allowed to make public comment today, further public
Correct,
comment
because
today.
we've already received that public comment.
Okay, I just want to make sure that those in the audience and on video did hear that.
And I'm not seeing anyone that would like to provide public comment. So with that, we move on to presentations. The first one is our financial update for 2025 quarter 1. And with that, we have Jeff Albrecht, the Director of Finance and Administrative Services. With that, Jeff.
Good evening. I'm here to present to you financials for the first quarter. So this would be January through March for the city. So again, you've probably kind of seen a theme in this. I did add a little bit more information as our financial system's now able to produce a little bit more comparison. But you'll see some similar slides to what you've seen in the past. So first thing I'm going to touch on is general fund revenue, and the majority of the time I'm going to spend on general fund as it does have the most impact and is the one that we really need to financially watch the most closely. So here you see a comparison, a 5-year comparison of general fund revenue through first quarter. Our quarter 1 budget was more than brought in, but we are up from previous years, and I'll talk a little bit more about what goes into that here in a little bit. This does not include the airport, any grants we received through the airport, any CARES funding that happened in the past, or any ARPA funds that were occurred in 21 and 22 that we received. So I will talk about this, and you'll probably hear me say this a lot. Because it is just 3 months, timing can really impact some things. So literally, if you pay a bill on April 1st and last year you paid it on March 30th, that can swing some comparisons. So I just want to kind of put that out there as a contingency on all these. But overall, revenue is trending upwards, which is good. But something we still really need to keep a monitor on. And some of that isn't new revenue to the city, as I'll explain here in a little bit. This is our property tax collection. So property taxes make up the largest amount of the general fund budget. They account for over about 30% of the general fund revenues. The majority of taxes are collected in the months of April and October by the county, and then that's submitted to the city in the months of May and November. So through first quarter, it's not an overly meaningful comparison, to be honest with you, but I did want to share that because it is such a large source of revenue. So at the end of the day, this trend line is going to be very consistent at year end. And really, because of the way it's done, we pretty much collect within about 1% of the levied tax amount. So it's one of our most consistent methods of revenue. There is a tax lid of 1% on existing properties. So regardless of what property values change or don't change, the total amount of the city, so not necessarily for each individual property owner, but the total amount the city collects on existing property can only go up by 1%. New construction can add to that, sometimes can add another 1% or 1.5%, but it is kind of have a cap on the limitation on what we can collect and what we can receive there. And just a reminder, we do not collect on university buildings, which are, of course, is quite significant in Pullman. Government buildings or churches, those are exempt from property tax. Here's a trend line on sales tax. Sales tax, as you can imagine, 2021 was coming out of COVID and was low. Recovered well in 22 and 23. And then in 24 and what we've seen so far in 25 is that numbers really started to level out. 24 was still pretty good through the first quarter, and then it kind of dipped off a little bit after that. And I want to remind you, when I say first quarter, what this really is November, December, and January sales. So again, similar to what happens is at the end of the month, so let's say a business collects sales tax for the month of November. At the end of November, they submit that to the state. The state receives it in December. They give it to us in January. So there's about a 2 to 3 month gap in when the actual sales. So just keep in mind when I say quarter one, that doesn't necessarily relate to January, February, March sales within the city. Budget-wise, we had projected just under 1.7 million. We are a little under that. January revenue was almost dead on what we budgeted. February was down a fair amount. March was down slightly. So, and we saw that last year. There wasn't really a consistent pattern. It kind of varied, and it seems like we might be into that again. This is the second largest source of revenue after property taxes, but unlike property taxes, is extremely variable. I will note that the transportation benefit district tax, that 0.1 of 1% is not included in here. That's in a separate fund, so that's not part of the general fund, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. Here's a few other general fund revenues, and this I just put in as kind of a chart for comparison. So there's other taxes not related to the property or sales tax. The biggest one is the utilities tax, and I want to point that out. You see that jump from about $924,000 to about increase of about $500,000. Some of that is increase in utility tax payments, but we did make the decision, the council made the decision to defer part of that utility tax funds. 25% used to be dedicated to transportation. Transportation had a fairly, was able to kind of see a reduction there based on some of the grant funding they've received. So that's a temporary reduction for transportation, and that was shifted over to the general fund to deal with some of the general fund revenues that weren't increasing. So out of that $500,000, that is all not new revenue to the city. A good chunk of that is actually just a shift of revenue. So it is good that we're seeing some trending up in the total, but it's a little misleading if you just think, oh, we've collected extra $500,000 in utilities taxes. That's not the case. So, admission tax, you can see there, this is primarily driven by WSU events, and certainly it can be very sporadic. Again, it's based on when they collect the revenue, not when the events occurred. Licensing and permit revenue is down a little bit, and that's really something to continue to keep an eye on. It was down last year too. That's something to really evaluate. Again, first quarter, our caution, sometimes it's a little hard to do too much comparison. But that does have an impact not only on that direct revenue, but a lot of that permitting revenue then sometimes leads to new construction, which of course new construction leads to increased property tax revenue. So the fact that this is down isn't a direct indication of that, but it has the potential to be a signal of future property taxes. We have intergovernmental grants and revenues. These are other government units that we provide services to, other grants that we receive. Marijuana and liquor tax is one I kind of call out. That's money that's remitted back to the city based off of money that the state collects. That's been a very consistent number, as you can see year over year there. That changes very little. We do have government fees, fines, and penalties. This does include some money that WCU pays for some services, and some of that is definitely related to timing as far as collections on some of those monies from WSU. And then we have some miscellaneous revenues. We saw a big spike of this in 2024, driven primarily by opioid settlement money. We will see some more of that come in this year. It probably won't be quite as much as 24, just based on how the timing of those payments come from those lawsuit settlements. This is general fund expenses. And just a reminder, general fund includes public safety, so police, fire, library, recreation, administration, communications, our grants department, and the majority of our community development department. So a lot of the kind of core functions in the city fall within the general fund. So this is a compilation of all those expenses. Good news is expenses have been controlled. We've really had a lot of discussions with leadership based on the uncertainty, and as we're seeing flattening revenues, to really kind of focus on controlling expenses. That looks like that's successful. I will again caveat this with some timing, and one in particular timing issue. There's less paydays, for example, in first quarter than there was last year. For salaried employees, it doesn't matter, but anyone that's paid like on an hourly basis, that actually, because of the number of employees, that can actually impact it. So that'll obviously balance out as we go through second quarter. But overall, this is a generally positive sign that our department heads are doing a good job of controlling expenses. This is general fund related specifically to capital expenses. So 2020, 2021, and 2022, we really had depressed capital expenses. Some of that was deliberate in dealing with COVID. Some of it was we just couldn't do projects during COVID, or couldn't order equipment because it wasn't available. 2023 even was a little bit depressed, especially early on. And 2024 is when you kind of started to see things sort of return to normal on that capital. So this is just something to track. We don't really budget quarterly on capital because, again, they're big dollar items, and so it can kind of swing greatly. But you can see the total annual budget for capital for the general fund is about $2.5 million. And just to clarify a couple things on that, about $1 million of that is projects that were carried forward that were started last year and not completed. And then that does include Metro Parks funded capital projects. Those are actually expensed out of the general fund, and then Metro Park funds go over to cover those expenses. So that's more than what you might see, for example, on the CIP. When you look at the general fund line, you're going to say that's a lot less, and that's because it doesn't include the Metro or those projects that are in transition. So we'll break down by department on the general fund. So this is legislative expenses. Right now it is significantly higher than budget. Every year we get the voter registration fees bill from the county, and it always comes in kind of right at the end of March. So sometimes it's in late March, sometimes it's in early April. We paid it in late March this year. So again, that while it looks like it's a lot over budget now, that'll balance out in the next quarter. If you take that piece out, the expenses are slightly lower than budget. One thing to do keep in mind is we will receive a second bill most likely this year for election fees. Primary elections, they usually bill out right before the end of the year. The general election, we usually get the bill the next year. So for example, last year's general election, we paid in January. That's what will be the case this year, but it's looking like we'll probably have primary election this year, so there will be an election fee bill that will probably come late in 2025. So that's just something to keep in mind. Finance administrative, so this includes the finance staff, the clerk, HR, attorney, communications, grants, and administration. So again, here you kind of see the graph. Right now, we're kind of right on what was projected for operating budget. We have had an ongoing capital project with our ERP implementation that have had expenses carried from 23, 24, and 25. It's a three-stage project. We completed the financial piece in 23. We completed the permit and licensing piece early in 25, and currently on target to complete the utility billing piece later this summer. So that'll be the completion of that kind of 3-year project that's related to capital. Here you'll see law enforcement expenses. Again, this shows total expenses including capital, so sometimes the capital can kind of vary a little bit, particularly when you're looking at only the first quarter. But operating budget was about $2.4 million, so they are performing under budget. Again, law enforcement, as you can imagine, is heavily personnel driven, so as I mentioned earlier, there is kind of that caveat of timing on the pay cycles. Again, fire and ambulance, very similar, slightly under last year and under operating budget. And again, just to reiterate the payroll issue as the majority of the costs are related to staff. Community and economic development, you've seen a pretty consistent expense there for the last few years. Is quite a bit under budget. I think we're going to need to continue to monitor. It's good to see some savings so far and continue to monitor that through quarter 2. Library expense, that 2024 spike, there was a small capital project that they did in first quarter of 2024, so that kind of is what caused that 2024 spike. If you take that out, it's pretty consistent across there. It was definitely depressed during COVID as they had a lot of restrictions on what they could do in hours, but you can see kind of consistent slight increase in expenses from 23 through 25, which is to be expected. Parks and Recreation, again, performing slightly better than what was budgeted through first quarter and pretty consistent to previous years. Their trend line is a little bit steeper, both based off of increases out of COVID as well as just some increases, particularly in some of the participant recreation activities that they've had. They've seen some good growth really over the last 2 years. So that ends general funds. What I'll do on the rest of the funds is really primarily focus on expenses. One thing that is new this year is because some of these funds can really vary greatly on the capital expenses, I separated out the capital expenses and I showed what's budgeted for the full year and kind of what we spent to capital, and then kind of tried to show the operating, so that gives you a little bit better, because early on you get these huge bounces up and down compared to when some of the capital projects are. So this is our streets and arterial streets. And you can see the trend line there. Budget-wise, as far as operating budget, we're under budget. Capital, we've spent a little over $400,000 of the $2.9 million that was budgeted for that. I will note that arterial streets does include expenses related to downtown. The majority of those expenses have hit. I think 96% of that was all done last year, so there's a very small amount that's still coming through this year, and a lot of that actually is hit already. I think we have a couple small payments left coming in, but the majority of that has happened, but there is a few expenses from the downtown project that relate to 2025. And again, as you can imagine, a lot of the streets expenses happen in the summer. If you're not familiar with construction season, that's when a lot of the expenses will be coming in, is in quarter 3. Or early quarter 4. Our utilities expenses, this makes up our water, sewer, stormwater, and sewage treatment. We really see some fluctuations in capital projects. Again, there's a lot of capital projects that were pushed off during COVID, and you're starting to see those come back. Overall, the operating budget to operating expenses is very positive right now. I will note that a lot of they've not spent much capital on utilities, and that is not uncommon for first quarter. But there's a plan of about $9.5 million of capital projects or equipment, and only about $103,000 had been spent through the first quarter. And again, that's not abnormal, but something to keep in mind is there's some big expenses coming down the road later this year. Transit, very similar. Here you see the operating comparison, the total budget comparison. And I apologize, I did realize that your board pack, I reversed the budget and the expense on the capital. And I think I put it in as budget zero with $3.3 million of expenses, and thank you, Councilmember, for catching that. So we had budgeted about $3.3 million. We have some bus replacement coming. None of that has been expended yet. So that's kind of why you see it's low compared to previous years. We have spent no capital through first quarter. Again, not completely abnormal, but that's timing on when buses can be delivered. So operating expenses are well in line with what was budgeted. And just know that we have some, it's budgeted, but we have some large capital expenses coming. This is our internal service fund. So this makes up our equipment rental division, our buildings, our IT, and our GIS. So again, these are services that basically the city provides to itself. And so there's an entire recoup of costs, but it's city expenses that recoup those costs. So at the end of the day, it kind of nets zero for the entire city. But these are really important services. Again, there's some capital variations in here, some large capital expenses coming, particularly on some vehicle replacement. But you can see the operating budget is performing well to date. Civic Improvement Fund, or also our L-tax, this is our lodging tax. You can see we saw significant growth coming out of COVID. In our lodging tax, we've now, like many of our revenues, seen that level off a little bit. So our quarter one revenue, and again, keep in mind, we got that gap in receiving the funds. But we are seeing that tail off, and that's leveled off a little bit, and that'll be something to keep an eye on as we go forward. It's still a good number, but it is, for the first time since pre-COVID, we've seen a decrease in it, although not significant, which is good. I put this in here, so the Transportation Benefit District and the Metro Parks District, again, those are technically separate entities that then basically shift funds to allow the city to do work. So Metro Parks has been around for, I want to say, about 20 years, and typically we've used those to do capital Metro Parks projects. This is the first year that the Transportation Benefit District has started to generate revenue. And again, because of the gap, you see it's really March is the first month they've really started to receive revenue of a tune of about $53,000. And then that's something that I think we'll need to kind of continue to discuss, you know, what we use that, and do we do similar to Metro Parks and use that to support some capital improvements, particularly knowing that the street fund probably doesn't have enough cash to really properly evaluate some of the capital needs of the city. And I think, you know, when the initial discussion occurred at the Transportation Benefit District, that was certainly something that came up, was how to fund street maintenance and improvements. This next slide is not something that you've probably seen in the past, and this is cash balances. So this is the balance of cash within the city compared to March 31st of each of the previous years. So where you see the general fund, we saw an increase, start to level off in 22 and 23, start to dip down in 24 and 25. This isn't entirely unexpected, particularly the 24 and 25 budgets. They were passed using cash to help balance that budget. It is important, though, that cash is important, because that does give us the ability to fund capital projects. It does give us flexibility in future operations. So because we are seeing that dip, even though it's somewhat expected, that's something you're probably going to hear me talk a lot more about than I have in previous years. I did exclude opera funds in there, so that doesn't vary it. And then you see the city cash balance. So this is as the entire city, not including the airport and those types of things. That one's been much more consistent. But again, if you remember back when we talked particularly on the utility fund and transit, there's a lot of large capital expenses that are coming at us in the next 6 to 9 months. So I do expect as we go forward that the citywide level cash is going to start to dip a little bit too compared to previous years. Again, based on the increased capital expenditures, that's not entirely unexpected, but it is something that we need to probably continue to watch a little bit closer going forward. So just a few final thoughts. Again, quarter one is going to have the most variances, so just keep that in mind. You'll start to see some of those really level out and become a little bit more meaningful in some of those comparisons year to year as we complete quarter two. Operations currently are dependent on cash, so that's why it's really critical to make sure and keep an eye on those cash balances, because both 25 and 26 relied on those cash to help balance budgets, and that's going to really, if those levels get too low, it's going to be really, we're going to have to start making difficult operational decisions and capital decisions. Revenue sources are critical. We saw some good growth in revenue in 21, 22, and 23 coming out of COVID. That leveled off in 24, and it's going to be real critical for us to continue to evaluate, if those level out, and knowing that some of those revenue sources are out of our control to try to increase, right? For example, like property tax, that's a dictation by the state, and we're very limited in how much we can grow that pot of money. And again, capital expenses are typically higher in later quarters, and so a lot of times when you look at the budget, you're going to see those capital expenses roll in a lot through the summer and late quarter 2, quarter 3, and early quarter 4. So just something to keep in mind of those expenditures coming. With that, I would gladly answer any questions council has.
So with that, Councilmember Guido.
Thanks, Jeff. My question, well, it's probably a chance for you to educate me around way back up on general fund revenues. The admissions tax, also known as the entertainment tax, would you say?
Probably, yeah. So
Okay.
it's admission on athletic events, bowling. So yeah, entertainment.
The movie
Theater was one, so that obviously is a revenue that's not
Yeah.
there now. Again, the majority of the revenue comes from WCU Athletics or even other WCU events that charge admission. It is worth noting that school district athletics, Pullman School District athletics are exempt from that. So Pullman School District, if you pay admission to go to a high school basketball game or whatever, that's not part of it. So, but yes.
And that explains the variability as it relates to COVID, 2021.
Yes.
But one thing that we've been hearing as a council is that some of our businesses, one of the reasons why they've left is because of this entertainment tax. And I guess I'd like some idea, not to put you on the spot, but what are we talking about there in terms of a tax as it relates to the consumer and to the business owner?
So the tax is a 5% tax on the admissions, and it's admissions only. So if a movie theater or WCU Athletics has other revenue sources like concessions or that, it doesn't apply to that. It's strictly the admissions. I certainly don't have a number off the top of my head of like specifically what it is for the movie theater. But I can tell you WCU Athletic Events is out of the probably somewhere between 400 and 500,000 to come this year. I would guess that probably at least 80% of it is WCU Athletics, and then there's also WCU. So I don't know exactly what the number is. It's not, but it's 5% on the admission-only piece is what the
It's
what the tax
5%
is.
across the board.
Correct.
Okay. How does that compare to other cities?
I don't know. I know a lot of cities have admissions tax. And I think 5% is pretty standard, but I don't have actual data on. I'd have to look at specifically at other cities to see what they do.
That would be interesting to know.
Okay.
Councilmember Delira.
Yeah. One of the things that I was really excited for is the Transportation Benefit District revenue. And I know I've asked this question over email, but since we'll be having a conversation about supporting Coast, I was wondering if council wanted to contract with a nonprofit to provide supplemental transit services or vehicles, would council be able to use the TBD funds to pay for that? So.
Yeah, so just to kind of clarify, and again, Metro Parks is very similar. We typically don't do expenses out of a Metro Parks fund or the Transportation Benefit District is its own fund. We typically transfer those funds to wherever the expense, so the streets fund, transit fund, those types of things. The Transit Benefit District taxes have to be applied to streets, sidewalk, or transit improvements. So that's the criteria, but those expenses would then fall into whatever appropriate funds. So I guess that would be potentially an expense that might qualify. I think what you need to do then is evaluate what are your other cost opportunities in other transit things. And again, I think one of the things that the council probably needs to have a discussion about later this year, particularly as it relates to CIP, TIP projects, is what is the best use of those funds. We did not specifically budget those for this year, knowing that, one, it was only going to be a partial year's collections, And two, knowing that some of the expenses for capital were probably going to be pretty significant, that it might account for more than a year's worth, for example, of revenues.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much, Jeff. Our next presentation is from Disability Action Center Northwest, and we have Mark Leeper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Mark Leeper, and I'm Executive Director of Disability Action Center Northwest. It's a private nonprofit, 501c3, head office in Moscow. We have an office in Lewiston, Idaho, an office in Post Falls, Idaho, and an office in Spokane, Washington. So right off the start, I'd like to introduce, number one, myself. I got involved, I actually wrote the 501c3 documents and started Disability Action Center really out of a program that a company called Stepping Stones over in Moscow had since about 1981. And so I've been around there for a while. It's amazing they hired me when I was 7. Anyway, it's been quite a journey. But a lot of things along the way that we've struggled with is kind of helping people know what a Center for Independent Living is. And because people have a perception about disability, and it's often based on a charity model, a sense, and there's a lot of great organizations that provide services to people with a disability. And we're not like that. We are an organization of people with a disability that work with our peers, other people with a disability, and work with communities. So I just wanted to introduce that because we are a little bit different. We're a grassroots organization, we're a justice organization, we're an equity organization. We're about community and people with disabilities being part of communities and historically not being included as parts of communities. So that's kind of our basis, and I wanted to just kind of introduce that because it clarifies a little bit of some of our stuff. So first of all, on this first slide, which I see you all don't get to see.
Here it comes.
Except now, through the magic of electronics. So what is a Center for Independent Living? Well, we have a definition because, of course, we get federal grants, and all federal grants have definitions. We are a consumer-controlled, community-based, cross-disability, non-residential nonprofit organization. So there's some really key parts of that. Let's see now, how do I guess this must be the, there we go. So a center, pardon me, let me go back real quickly. So consumer-controlled means we're run by people with disabilities, people with any kind of disability, all kinds of disabilities. So I have staff, some staff have mobility disabilities, some staff have sensory disabilities, some staff have psychiatric disabilities, if you will, i.e. And other staff are on an autism spectrum. So we really are a cross-section of folks with a disability. So we've kind of got that's our consumer-controlled. We're run by folks that we might serve. We're community-based. We serve the communities that we're in, and we serve those 8 western, or eastern, pardon me, Washington counties, 5 northeastern, and then 3 right in this area, Whitman, Minnesotan, and Garfield. And then 10 northern Idaho counties. So we serve those communities, so we try to be responsive to those communities. And I mentioned we're cross-disability. We're non-residential. That was an important thing because Stepping Stones actually had started some group homes to get those folks with the most significant disabilities out of state institutions and back into smaller facilities in a local community. In 1992, our Rehabilitation Act amendment said that those funds could no longer be related to a residential entity. And so that's where when we created Disability Action Center. And of course, as I mentioned, we're a nonprofit. So as a Center for Independent Living, and there's about 400 of us around the country, so that's really a small amount for a large country. So I figure we're kind of lucky we have one, not just speaking personally. We do some core services. We are required. We're funded from a grant from Health and Human Services still. And we have to provide 5 core services. First of all, personal and community advocacy. Second, peer counseling and support, independent living skills training, information referral, and then transition services for getting people out of nursing homes, helping young people transition to adulthood, and keeping folks out of institutions and they don't want to be there. So the top one is really important, personal and community advocacy. We work with folks with a disability so that they can self-advocate. So they have a voice. We have a sense of power in terms of directing our own lives, and that's critical. We also then work with communities. So, and some of you, we've probably spoken to at some time. We work with all sorts of communities in terms of advocacy, in terms of ADA issues, fair housing issues. And so we really provide that kind of expertise in some of those areas to try to help our communities be more inclusive. Independent living skills training is important. A lot of organizations kind of help with some independent living skills. We kind of carry it farther because we think, what is a skill? Well, a skill is running for office. A skill is voting. A skill is anything that we all do in terms of our regular lives, not just activities of daily living, although we'll help with those too. Information referral, we serve a wide rural area and information is power. So we really think that's important. So we talk to people on the phone, via the internet a lot, all around the area. And then the transition services, folks tend not to want to live in institutions. And so helping people get out of an institutional setting and live in the community where they want to live is really important. And it's one of the key services. We can also provide other services with our federal funds, and then we have other things we do with other funds that we gain as well. They can be tailored to people and community needs and can include a number of things that can be different from center to center. And so each center may have something they do. I'll talk a little bit more about what we have. We provide some self-directed personal assistance services where the person that receives the services to stay in their home is their own boss. So they hire their staff. We help them be a good employer. That's an Idaho-only service because Washington is set up differently. One we're kind of excited about, I think is really cool, is the Veteran-Directed Care Program. This is a VA program for any veteran that needs services to stay in their own home. They can qualify for a budget through this program in the VA, and they're set up as their own employer. They can even hire their spouse to help take care of them. We're paying up to $24 an hour for some folks in Washington State. So we help set up the budget. We do a monthly meeting with the veteran to make sure everything's going okay. We help them with, we pay all the funds up front. And then we're reimbursed through a financial management services company that we also pay. But this allows veterans to stay at home and a lot of times their spouse to not have to worry about getting somebody else in. They have to quit their job or whatever. It's really a cool program. We do some benefits planning, helping folks with disabilities know how much money they can earn on Social Security without losing benefits. That's really important so people can plan out, can they go to work, how much do they need to earn, can they earn, and so on, without becoming destitute through working. Pathways to Partnerships is a new program that Idaho State applied for. Washington did not apply, and it's aimed at young people having better outcomes for work. And then transportation. We've been talking about transportation. We actually received funding through 5310 of the FTA funding, and that's for people with disabilities and or folks who are elderly in rural areas. And so we actually buy services through Coast Transportation. We have a contract with them each year, and we provide a mixture of volunteer drivers in private vehicles and accessible van services throughout the most rural parts of Idaho's District 2. Again, this is Idaho-specific money, but of course we use Coast that's in Washington. But that's a cool program. We provide community services. I mentioned systems advocacy, outreach, and education. We love to do presentations about disability stuff. Sometimes we work on advocacy issues, sometimes driven by individual complaints, some identified by staff and boards. Our effort is always to try to be transformative, to work positively with folks, to understand the issues and figure out solutions. We're not really interested in conflict. Some are driven by immediate needs. Sometimes people ask us quite often. But they're all driven by inclusion and equality of all people. That's our intent. Communities serve everybody, and we ought to serve our communities, all of us. Who do we serve? Individuals with a significant disability, so they actually have to have some issue going on for which they need some services. They have to physical, mental, cognitive, or sensory impairment. Disability substantially limits their ability to function independently in the family or community. And so, anyway, it's somebody with a pretty significant disability and a need. That's really driven by the barrier they face, so you can't really look at a condition and say it's significant or not. You can have what may appear to be insignificant or not very significant, but you're facing a significant barrier where you're going to lose home, you lose independence, or something of that nature. It becomes significant. So that's the individual services along with the community services. We provide services directly to the individual. We'll work with the individual to figure out what barriers they're dealing with and maybe solutions, and then give them the tools to work with. It's never our issue, it's always your issue. And we're going to help you figure out and find the tools and offer the support so you can take charge of your own life. We've had a number of successes we're pretty proud of. We do a statewide independent living newsletter. Vicki in our office does a great job, and it serves through, is spread throughout Washington and Idaho, reaching over 15,000 people. We've been working on accessible recreation stuff and had some great successes. Tubbs Hill in Coeur d'Alene, if you've ever been there, now has some accessible paths, and their kayak dock is outstanding in Post Falls on the river there, where somebody with a disability can launch in a kayak. So that's been really a cool thing. Accessible dog park, parking at Gritman Hospital was something that a consumer that worked with us was able to help with, and then a person in our office as well. Accessible community garden plot down here at Koppel Farms, which is the accessible garden plot in the city of Pullman. And so it serves everybody there. And we welcome, if you know anybody, encourage them to get out and garden there, that they need gardeners. We have a Blue Path website directory of business accessibility. It's intended to offer free marketing to businesses for the $490 billion disability market, and give people with a disability some sense of what they're looking at when they're going to go out for dinner or go out to a movie or whatever. Is there an accessible venue, and so on, and sensory accessible, physically accessible, and so on. We'll have an app available, developed by our local Pullman marketing firm very soon. We have a ramp program that we bought a number of ramps through the Christopher and Dana Reeves Foundation, so that we have then an agreement with Habitat for Humanity. They help put those up for folks, so temporary ramps until a permanent one can be built. We run the Northwest ADA Center Idaho through a grant from, the University of Washington, but it's federal money, and anyway, it comes through to serve all of the 4 states in the Northwest region. And we actually have it for Idaho, which, of course, because we do it, it covers into eastern Washington as well. And we offer technical assistance and training on the ADA through that. Rural transportation, I mentioned. Mental health videos and a whole bunch of things on our YouTube channel, DAC Northwest, that you can find. First responder training on how to interact with people with vision loss. So that's been fun. We do local, state, and national advocacy. We've worked with centers and other agencies across the nation. Here's a picture of me with the director of the NESPERS, Nimipu Tribal Vocational Rehabilitation Program. And this van is a van that we drove across the country. I actually picked it up in California. It's a national project to draw attention to people with disabilities and the rights of people with disabilities. Just before the election, to get out the disability vote, and also to promote an act called the LaTonya Reeves Freedom Act, which is an act designed to end the institutional bias for Medicaid. Medicaid currently funds, all Medicaid systems have to fund institutional services. They don't have to fund home and community-based services, which are often cheaper and where people most want to live. And so the LaTonya Reeves Freedom Act would make that mandatory Medicaid program also cover home and community-based services. So those are some things that were really fun, and then we got to travel through the Northeast to do that too, but drove that van from California through here, and then we went over and drove it through Massachusetts, up the Cape, and over into Vermont as well, just to draw attention. So you'll hear me speaking in Springfield, Massachusetts TV interview, so nobody else would talk. So that's us. Any questions? I'm not sure of my time, so I've been kind of rushing a little bit.
So with that, any questions? Councilmember Weller?
More of comments and then maybe one or two questions. Mark and Vicky, and you both are just an amazing team. I've loved seeing what you do with the mental health walk, and everything around the garden was absolutely phenomenal to see. Seems like it was quite a project. I did have a question. Have you had a chance to visit the Science Center? They have a sensitive disability room that we helped create. Did you have a chance to see that?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
We have grandkids.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you got to see that. So your work
Mandatory.
is spreading. I think
Yeah.
one question I'd like to ask is, going downtown, I know we've tried to make it more accessible, but I also know there's some challenges. Is there any way you could give feedback on how we could improve that area?
Oh, absolutely. It takes some time. I haven't looked
Yeah.
at it real closely. I've
Okay.
heard various things, but absolutely. Those are the sorts of things we'd love to take a look at and give feedback on, try to get opinions from various users.
Great. I appreciate that.
It's easy to meet the absolute requirements, but sometimes looking at some variations can make a big difference. So,
Great. And I really appreciate you coming down to City Hall and showing,
Yeah.
I didn't have a chance. I saw the pictures, and it looked like the departments
well,
had
the
a lot
mayor,
of fun.
the mayor went through.
You would have had fun on it. It was, couldn't pop too many wheelies, but.
Well, thanks to WSU's engineering students for developing that for us, and yeah, it's been really popular.
Any other, Councilmember Gaither?
Yes, I just want to just applaud you and your organization for the work that you're doing. I have two boys, both with IEPs and one with a disability, and this warms my heart knowing that these services are here in our region. And given that my son is nonverbal, I'm curious to know when it comes to communication, obviously that's a barrier. What services or resources do you have for families with nonverbal children or with just communication issues? And I noticed that you have a chapter for 14 to 24-year-olds, but can you talk a little bit about services that you offer specifically for toddlers up to 14? And I would also, third question, sorry, I'm loading it all on you, but when you define barriers, how do you assess or evaluate those barriers, who have barriers and who don't?
Sure. Real quickly, I mean, the first part, a lot of what we do is we're going to end up being the generalists, and we would talk about, well, what services are out there for nonverbal, and then try to find those, try to navigate, and make sure that when you're getting services, that your opinions matter, that you're in control. So again, you're the parent as the guardian, then it's about you having power over those decisions. And so we're going to try to find out who does that, and then how can you access those best possible way. It's not something that we're going to provide directly because we don't have the expertise in those areas. We're going to do picture boards, whatever we can. University of Idaho has the Center for Disability and Human Development, and they work an awful lot with people on the autism spectrum, and so they'll actually have a lot of resources. So assistive technology and so on, that's available. There's also the WATAP program in Washington that we would start looking at, well, what are the options? So that's a quick answer on that. It'd be more in-depth. We would dig in and find more. In terms of barriers, really, if you come into our office, you're the expert on your life. So what barrier are you facing? Why are you here? And then if you want, we'll go through, do you want a kind of guided self-interview and self-analysis to see, are there other things? How do you get around? How's your mobility? What about public transportation? Are you able to access that? What about income? What about your house? Can you turn on the faucets? Can you reach all the light switches? And so on. So we would really kind of do that guided analysis. If somebody wants, a lot of times folks come in and say, no, I need accessible housing and that's it. Or I need housing, period. That's one we hear a lot, and it's one of the most frustrating ones because we don't have a lot of answers. But that barrier severity is defined by the individual. And so our 3 criteria is, number 1, do you have a disability? All we care about is you say you do, that's good enough for us. Do you have a barrier? You identify that. And let's talk about that. So that's number 2. And number 3, is there something we can do? So if you want legal advice and so on, we don't do that. And so we would refer you over to some legal advice. If you want psychological counseling, we don't do that. But we will talk to you about how do you find a good counselor and what do we have out there. So it's all kind of organic, grassroots, peer-to-peer. That helps.
Councilmember Wright?
Thank you, Mark and Vicki. Lovely presentation. Nice to see you, Vicki. So my question, and you may have already answered it, but if someone lives either in transitional housing or in a group home, since you're non-residential, does that preclude the ability for those people to interact with you, or do you interact with the different agencies that support them?
We work with a whole bunch of agencies, and no, absolutely, anybody with a disability that wants to access, wants to talk to us. Somebody who lives in a group home might want to figure out, how can I have more say on what I have for dinner, or getting out in the community. How do I get out in the community? What are my rights when I get out in the community? Where can I access Blue Path? Where can I go that's accessible? Where can I go where they're going to read me a menu? Things like that. So absolutely, we would work with anybody regardless. We won't help people get into that institution. We would help them get out if they wanted, but we certainly would not discriminate based on their being in there. That's anybody, wherever they live, is somebody we would work with.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
Councilmember Fajarin?
Mark and Vicky, thank you so much. I always learn something new whenever I hear Disability Action Center presenting. You kind of touched a little bit about it in previous comments about working with many agencies. I feel like in this type of work, it's imperative the partnerships across the different agencies. And I just kind of wanted to ask, just this past month, I actually learned that the DVR, the Vocational Rehabilitation for Washington State, has a strong presence here in our community, and they work closely with Boost. I'm just asking if you work with those two organizations around job training.
Well, of course, I've been around 32 years, and so, yeah, absolutely. Again, our approach is going to be based when the person with a disability is wanting some assistance. But we also hear from organizations that, what can the person get plugged into some independent living skills training, something they don't do. So we'll work with them on that. Also in terms of accessibility questions, those I'm thinking about Boost. DVR is kind of interesting because we actually have funds that come through Washington DVR for our Spokane office, and that we use those for youth and young adult outreach and services. So we'll work with them and we used to do contractual work with them to do independent living services in Pullman area and so on. So it really depends on the individual, or depends on if they have a systemic issue. I mean, one way that we were used by IDVR one time was they had an employee who used a wheelchair, and they contacted me because they were under the State Department of Education and unable to say anything, and he was having to go outside and empty a leg bag in a bush because there wasn't an accessible restroom in the state office. And so they contacted me, and I wrote a letter. And so I heard later about that leaper guy. But later on, they had an accessible restroom for this person. And so our involvement can be pretty varied. But relationships is what it's all about as far as we're concerned. And that's when I say we want things to be transformative in a positive way. I really mean that, because we've seen the results of conflict too often. And so if there's a way we can build on commonalities and a way that we can make communities better, then it serves us all well. And so relationships with other organizations fall in the same way. We're working very closely with some parental organizations and so on, and VR, and this whole grant on Pathways to Partnership on the Idaho side. Hopefully, if by chance it came open again, Washington State to apply for that too, because we were actually a required partner for the first time ever in that kind of a service designed to get young people better employment outcomes.
Appreciate your advocacy.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments? With that, I'm sorry.
All good. Just about the federal grants, we're all aware of the current situation with both the state budget as well as the federal government just cutting, just in my opinion, money to just so important services. I just wanted to take a temperature check of your feelings on the current outlook of this $892,000 worth of grant funds that the Disability Action Center receives.
Well, we get, our grant funds are congressionally appropriated, which has kept them solid for now. We are concerned because we worry about the veterans program. That's such a great program, and we know VA staff is being laid off. So there's a number of things we have concerns about. So far, our funding has been stable. In fact, there's some strange changes in the new proposed budget that would actually increase the money that came through the states to us. And but at the same time, we just had 25 of our fellow persons with a disability in our advocacy organization called ADAPT nationally, who were arrested in Washington, D.C. for shutting down a committee hearing. And so I think they've been released now. But so there are a lot of very serious concerns about potential Medicaid cuts and access to Social Security offices and so on. So that's impacting so much of what we do. Monetarily, we're okay, but some of these other things that we're referring people to for services are of grave concern to us. And it just hurts people we serve.
Thank you for that insight.
Any others? If not, Mark, thank you very much. It's
Thank you.
Always great to have the conversation and your dedication and involvement. Appreciate that. Vicki also, and Vicki, I still miss the chocolates, just so you know. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next item up is the consent agenda. The items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature and will be enacted by a single motion of the City Council without separate discussion. With that, I'd entertain a motion to read the consent agenda by title only.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That'll sell them. If you will please read the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 1 is a motion to dispense with the reading of the regular meeting minutes of April 22, 2025, and approve them as submitted. Item 2 is a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks number 2011-30353 through 2011-30424, totaling $703,608.36. Item 3 is a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks number 2011-30425 through 2011-30493, totaling $275,353.10. Item 4, a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable payroll checks numbered 2011-30494 through 2011-30500, and paying electronic transfers number 269 through 280, totaling $1,239,844.55. Item 5, a motion to approve disbursements for UB refund checks number 2011-30501 through 2011-30533, totaling $2,088.46. Item 6, a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks number 2011-30534 through 2011-30584, totaling $345,850.42. Item 7, a motion to accept the Sidewalks 2024 contract as complete. Item 8, a motion to accept funding from the Sherrod Family Memorial Fund. Item 9 is ordinance number 25-05, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Pullman, Whitman County, Washington, amending City Code 1.04 and Pullman City Ordinance numbers, there's a lot of them, 13-6, Section 1, 2013, 85-24, Section 1, 1985, 84-14, Section 1, 1984, 79-27, Section 1, 1979, B-335, Section 1, 1977, B-324, Section 1, 1977, B-291, Section 1, 1976, and B-266, Section 2, 1976, and other matters properly related thereto. And finally, item 10, resolution number R-15-25, a resolution authorizing the submittal of a certified local government grant application to the Washington State Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation for the purpose of creating a Pullman Register of Historic Places district focusing on downtown Pullman.
Thank you. Do any council members desire to have any items removed from the consent agenda to be discussed separately? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second. With that, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Next up is, for regular agenda, item number 1, ordinance 15-06. And with that, Kurt Damon.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Before you this evening is an ordinance amending and adding sections of Pullman City Code 1.84 City Cemetery. A lot of these changes are what I would say are kind of housekeeping or routine in nature. So kind of working through this, Section 1 talks about cemetery committee established, and in here it says that the Parks and Rec Commission acts as a city cemetery, when in fact there is a city cemetery committee that is established outside of Parks and Recreation Commission. Section 2 refers to the duties and powers of that committee. So again, it's pulling out of the section, and we'll talk about that in the next agenda item that refers to the cemetery committee. Section 3 is just a title change there. Section 5 talks about dispositions of money. Our staff out in the cemetery do not handle any money for grave sales. That all goes through our city clerk and finance department. Section 6, again, just housekeeping, the change from the Parks and Rec Commission to the Cemetery Committee. Section 7 refers to alley burials. Previously, code stated that no burials could be allowed in alleys, which are the areas between our different sections. We kind of handle this on a case-by-case scenario. If there's a family that requests a burial next to the plot, and we see that it's not going to interfere in any way with maintenance, we would look at those on a case-by-case situation and either allow or deny those. Section 8 is a new addition to this code, and it talks about unique monuments that we would say are kind of more your large, unusual, ornate monuments. And there are some out at the cemetery, but there was never no procedure in place to kind of go through and evaluate those before they go out there. So basically, establishing a process that our cemetery committee would approve those. Some of that criteria is that there's a minimum of 4 grave sites next to each other. The request can't interfere with any of our maintenance that we need to do or interfere with any types of burials that would occur in that area. And then Section 9 is just having an appeal process to our city procedures if needed. So with that, I'd take any questions. Otherwise, staff recommends a motion to approve the amendments and additions to Pullman Municipal Code, Section 1.84, as presented.
Any questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to.
Move to adopt ordinance number 25-06.
Is there a second? With that, if you could read the ordinance, please, or the title.
Yes. Ordinance number 25-06, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Pullman, Whitman County, Washington, amending Pullman City Code Section 1.84.010, 1.84.040, 1.84.050, 1.84.090, 1.84.130, 1.84.160, 1.84.170, and ordinance numbers 81-25, Section 1, 1981, 81-25, Section 3, 1981, 81-25, Section 11, 1981, 81-25, Section 12, 1981, 81-25, Section 13, 1981, 82-28, Section 1, 1982, 87-22, Section 1, 1987, 89-2, Section 1, 1989, 07-13, Section 1, 2007, 18-7, Section 14, 2018, A-584, Section 1, 1965, A-584, Section 4, 1965, A-584, Section 5, 1965, A-584, Section 13, 1965, A-584, Section 17, 1965, A-584, Section 20, 1965, adding City Code Section 1.84.200, 1.84.210, and other matters properly related thereto.
With that, any discussion? Not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Kurt, you're up for the next ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor, and my apologies to the city attorney for that. Now I understand why you kept denying my requested changes. Before you is a ordinance now that deals with City Code Section 1.54 Cemetery Committee. And really these changes are related to what you just approved in pulling out the Cemetery Committee duties and pulling them over to this code that actually deals with the Cemetery Committee. So just the highlighted areas that in Section 1 that they should advise Parks and Rec Commission on management, operation, and control of the cemeteries. So really, again, it's just what we had identified under the city cemetery ordinance and pulling our code and pulling those over to the Cemetery Committee. So with that, I would take any questions.
Any questions? If not, I entertain a motion.
Move to approve ordinance number 25-07.
Second.
With that, Thad, if you could read the ordinance, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance number 25-07, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Pullman, Whitman County, Washington, amending Pullman City Code Section 1.54.020, and ordinance numbers 05-25, Section 3, 2005, and other matters properly related thereto.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next up, item number 3. And with that, Ariel, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. So the first ordinance before you is for the final decision on the amendments to Title 17 zoning. So as stated at last month's presentation, this originally started in August of 2023, and our public hearing before the Planning Commission started May of 2024 and concluded in February 2025, with Planning Commission recommending the adoption of the proposed amendments for you. So as stated in the presentation, the main changes are around the inclusion of plain language, updating images, 2 new code sections on accessory dwelling units and short-term rentals, and some middle housing updates to fulfill the middle housing grant that was awarded through the Department of Commerce, which, just as a reminder, is due by June 15th of this year. So if there's no additional questions around these amendments, staff does recommend an approval. Sorry, I hit the button. Does recommend approval of the amendments as provided.
Any questions? Councilmember Weller.
Hello again.
Hi.
So I want to ask, so I had a community member reach out to me about demolition permits for properties 45 years and older. Because I know this was originally removed many years ago, and then it's now been placed back in. Can you explain kind of why it was the choice of the 45 years? Because I know that's probably quite a few buildings in Pullman.
Yep, so for historic preservation, anything is considered a historic resource if it's 50 years or older. And so the Historic Preservation Commission wanted to make sure that resources were being included within 45 years, just in case there's some discrepancies on build dates. And so all it is staff going out, taking pictures of that resource so we can document possible historic resources that could be being demolished.
Okay. And then another question with the STRs. Those, and I just want to make sure it's clear, those requirements, all except I believe it was the track lighting for the exit, are mandated by the state, correct?
Correct. So the one addition that we had from our building official was it's a little plug-in sticky light. So it's sticky on the back. You stick it somewhere on the wall. It plugs into an outlet. And then when the light gets notification the power is out, the light turns on. And so it's to provide a way to make sure people are able to get to an exit safely.
And there's no limit to how many STRs are in Pullman, is that correct? Or
Correct.
not?
We haven't put any limits on how many in total a single person can have.
As many, okay. I think the only other thing I would say about this is my vote on this is not going to be reflective of the hard work that you've done and that the Planning Commission has done. This has been a huge lift. I think last time I know there had been discussion about taking STRs out and putting them separate. And that wasn't chosen by the rest of the council, and that's fine. I accept that. I think one of the things I have a huge challenge with is I've had a lot of people reach out, discuss with me how they are on fixed income. This is something that they were using to help supplement. And it's nothing the city can do because this is from the state, and this is a trend nationwide. And I had another person reach out, say STRs provide a vital gap or service where hotels are booked and expensive and so on, and this will further increase prices. So I think what I want to get across is that I'm frustrated personally with not with you, and I shouldn't look at, I'll look like up at the sky. I'm very frustrated with the amount of mandates coming down from Washington State that continues to put a crush on our economy. I feel that any regulation of short-term rentals should be determined by us, Pullman, a local community. I have not personally, and maybe I'm not enough in the know, heard many problems, at least locally. And so I feel like it's trying to fix something that's not broken locally. So I just want to make sure that you understand that my vote is not reflective of your work, your effort, your labor, or that of the Planning Commission or of the Planning Department whatsoever. I have the utmost faith. This, for me, is more of a statement about how disappointed and frustrated I am with the state as a whole. So I thank you, Ariel, for all of your work. I really do.
Councilmember Guido.
Thanks, Ariel. I wanted to comment on the accessory dwelling units and short-term rentals section. Like Councilmember Weller, I've received quite a few phone calls as it relates more to the short-term rentals, but I'll start with the accessory dwelling units. As a proponent of these, and also on the affordable housing side, there's a debate whether this actually takes away from affordable housing or whether it could be argued that it helps with affordable housing. And you could make an argument on either side, but one thing I did want to bring forward to folks is to help people understand that, in fact, accessory dwelling units could be a way for people to supplement their income and afford a home by looking at this model to offset the cost of their mortgage. Having said that, again, I'm a proponent of accessory dwelling units as well as your overall work on the plan. I realize it's an incredible amount of work that represents, I think, like 2 to 3 years. Most cities don't try and tackle an entire section like this. So the fact that there's going to be some disagreement is not surprising. Short-term rentals, however, have been receiving feedback that, like Councilmember Weller said, that it feels like we're going down the road of trying to regulate something that has not been a problem. I believe that we need to recognize the short-term rentals that are here already, and they need to participate in the system and pay a fee and do the things that need to be done, but I don't think they need to go over and above. And my understanding is, to some extent, we're requiring things that are over and above the state requirement. So, as was alluded to, I was brought up the idea of separating these out. That did not, was not supported, so I'll go ahead and vote for this, but with the idea that I'd like short-term rentals to continue to be something that we look at. Possibly heard a loud outcry from some of the folks that are running that they'd like to review this section of our codes. So I would welcome their thoughts on short-term rentals going forward if a revision is necessary. And yeah, those are my thoughts. The only other thing is the idea that we have to do this because of the middle housing grant. I don't want to lose out on that, but I also feel like it's a little bit like we got to do this because we got to get the grant. And it's a large undertaking to accept in full form all of the changes that we're making without some feelings of, I don't love this part. So just wanted that for the record.
Any other questions? Councilmember Gaither.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to confirm that we will have a discussion.
Right,
correct?
this is questions for her.
Because I want
and
to have a conversation with my fellow council members and discuss what they've stated. But I do want to ask a question. And as I look at the ordinance and I compare it to Washington's law, it aligns on fundamentals like the insurance and the safety, tax compliance, the insurance compliance. But it does go a little bit further. And I just want to ask the question on the state law, RCW 64.37.010. Short-term rental does not include any of the following. 1, a dwelling unit that is occupied by the owner for at least 6 months during the calendar year and in which fewer than 3 rooms are rented at any given time. So this is someone, a member of our community, say they reached out and said, listen, I own a home and I just rent a bedroom out every now and again during football games. The state doesn't consider me an STR. Why is the city considering me an STR? Can you speak to that?
Yep, so in conversations with both our building official and our fire marshal, we understand that that's the state definition. For life safety, it's still the same. Whether you're renting out a bedroom 2 nights out of the year, every other month, whatever it is, you are still a transient occupancy under the building code. And safety shouldn't be dependent on how often that room is rented out. So our building official and fire marshal both agreed that for safety purposes, that all short-term rentals should be looked at the same.
Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion for this ordinance. You just have to make,
You just have to make it.
you just have to make a motion.
Motion to approve ordinance number 25-08.
Is there a
Second.
second for that? That, if you could read the motion, please.
Sorry. Ordinance number 25-08, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Pullman, Whitman County, Washington, relating to zoning, amending Pullman City Code Title 17, amending ordinance numbers 23-17, 2003, 22-27, 2022, 22-26, 2022, 22-10, 2022, 22-9, 2022, 22-2, 2022, 21-15, 2021, 21-9, 2021, 15-21, 2015, 14-12, 2014, 14-4, 2014, 10-9, 2010, 10-2, 2010, 08-4, 2008, 07-9, 2007, 06-15, 2006, 05-12, 2001, 00-22, 2000, 00-20, 2000, 00-8, 2000, 00-3, 2000, 99-49, 1999, 98-23, 1998, 96-19, 1996, 92-29, 1990, 90-16, 1990, 90-15, 1990, 90-10, 1990, 89-13, 1989, 89-10, 1989, 89-18, 1989, 89-1, 1989, 88-8, 1988, 88-6, 1988, 87-9, 1987, and all other matters properly related thereto.
Sold.
With that discussion, then. So, Councilmember Gaither?
Sure, I'll go first. I looked at the Airbnb data. It shows that there's currently 217 properties listed, and I think we talked about this at our last meeting. 217 properties listed, but I think only since 2019, 14 applications. So there's a gap, right? There's a gap. Not only is there a gap, there's also a lack because we can't even offer it to R1s right now as it currently stands. I know we all care about our neighborhoods, but I think when over 200 homes are quietly being offered on Airbnb or similar sites, and only 14 went through the approval process, I think we can keep, I don't want to keep pretending that the old conditional use permit rules are working either, because they're not. That's all I want to say. They're popping up without inspections, without parking oversight, without clear local contacts. I think it's for safety, for no other reason, safety. I think it could be meaningful and in some ways less restrictive. We're opening it up. We're opening it up to R1. We're opening it up to the entire city. So outside, I mean, beyond, not stopping at duplexes, of course, but I believe this ordinance isn't about making things harder. I don't believe that. I think it's about knowing that there's a clear process if problems arise. And it's also tied to a $75,000 middle housing grant, which helps us address affordable rentals and other housing needs. So I don't think this is a big government overreach. I think it's common sense ordinances and regulations that makes Pullman a little bit safer and perhaps more attractive to responsible visitors, because I'm someone that I rent Airbnbs and different things often. I'm not endorsing them or anything, but I like whenever there's a reputable home being listed. So we can make it more attractive because we have a process in place. So that's why I'm for it. I've heard the community and I get it. It's going to change the status quo. And I think there's some things I would like to see differently in it. But I also want to point out the Planning Commission voted unanimously for this, unanimously. And I also respect their expertise and their wisdom.
Councilmember DeLira?
Yeah, I would also like to support what Councilmember Gaither said. For safety and quality reasons, I definitely support the STR's code right now. Extinguishers, inspections, emergency contacts for guests. I think, to me, it's the bare minimum.
Councilmember Weller?
Well, I've already really spoken, so people know where I stand on this. But I will say, anybody who stayed in some of the long-term rentals in our area, you want to talk about some health and safety. There's some areas that need some improvement. And we're focusing on homes that people live in. Ones I've met, there haven't been any complaints I know of. And again, I already explained that I may not be in the know. I'm not renting, short-term rentals here in Pullman. But I do think it is government overreach. I do think that it's going to make it more difficult for mom or pop on a fixed income to run something like that. And it'll make it a little more confusing. So respectfully disagree. And, if you haven't checked out some of the long-term rentals, we need to focus on those too. So not all of them. We've got a lot of great apartment rentals, but I'm just letting you know, respectfully disagree, but appreciate your opinion.
Councilmember Guido?
So, like I said, I do agree that we need to acknowledge that there are quite a few existing short-term rentals that are not registered, and they need to be, and we need a process. The other concern, and I'll just add to my other comments here, is the code enforcement and the regulatory piece. I feel like we already are challenged by this as a city. When I talk to people, that's one of the biggest frustrations I hear, like around long-term and short-term, long-term, I should say, rentals, is code enforcement, that it either is somehow perceived as unfair or that it's not being enforced. So I don't know if that's lack of resources or continued education or looking at processes. I would like to encourage folks to consider looking at that in a little bit more detail and how we can do some quality improvement in that area. But part and parcel with what we're doing here with this, particularly on short-term rentals, requires that we're going to have to enforce those things. And I'm just not sure we have always had a record of doing that.
Councilmember Gaither?
I just want to quickly say that, you know, I consider Councilmember Weller a wise man, someone that I learned from as a newbie sitting up here. And I also want to just note that I don't want to, from my vantage point, I don't want to create a false binary that if I am in support of short-term rentals, that I'm not in support of long-term rentals. I think it can be a yes and. It can be a both and. It's not a binary. So I just wanted to note that.
Councilmember Wright?
Without pontificating here too much, I would just like to concur with the comments made by Councilmember Guido. I would agree with those particular items that she addressed. And at the same time, I would also like to acknowledge the concern of the number of soon-to-be vacant council seats, to which we have a number of candidates in the audience right now that feel like they would like to have a voice given the extent of this ordinance. I mean, it took our city attorney almost 5 minutes to read this. And the long-term implications of what we're voting on tonight certainly needs to have a thorough understanding by all of us on the dais of what we're voting for tonight, as well as given the situation that we're facing where we almost will have half of our council turnover, that I think we do need to defer some of this to a future time frame. But given all of these sections that we're looking at amending, not sure how to do that. Those are just my comments. But.
Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
So I have a 4-2, it passes. Next up is item 4. And Ariel, you're still up.
So the second ordinance before you is also for final decisions about the amendments relating to the proposed chapter 1660, which will be our floodplain management districts. So this update is moving floodplain management districts out of Title 17 zoning into Title 16 environment. And this update has been previously reviewed by the Department of Ecology to make sure that it does conform with state standards.
Any questions for Ariel? Not, then I entertain a motion.
Move to adopt ordinance number 25-09.
Second.
Is there a second? That, if you could read the ordinance, please.
This one's got a few less numbers. Ordinance number 25-09, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Pullman, Whitman County, Washington, relating to environment amending Pullman City Code Chapter 16.60, amending ordinances number 21-15, 2021, 14-5, 2014, 10-27, 2010, 10-26, 2010, and repealing Pullman City Code Chapter 17.100 and other matters properly related thereto.
With that, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Next up, item number 5, Ariel again.
Yes, so the resolution before you goes with the creation of the short-term rental code from the first ordinance that I presented to you. So this is a one-time application fee which would include staff review time of the materials for both planning and protective inspection division staff, and the inspection by protective inspection staff members. And so we are proposing a $200 fee, which traditionally inspection fees are a base hour at $100, so that's where the first 100 comes from. And then the other 100 is split between both planning and protective inspection division staff time for that review.
With that, any questions of Ariel? Councilmember Fajarin?
We've talked about a lot today, so I apologize if this question is obvious, but so when we're talking about short-term rental, the fee, and you say one time, is that one time a year or just a flat one time?
When they submit their application.
Okay, and that permit's good for,
So the application is good for 1 year. There is no renewal fee. So they would still renew, letting us know that they are continuing the use of the short-term rental through the next year, but there is no additional fee for that renewal. So it's just a one-time application fee of $200, and then that sets their application number, and then as long as they're still using it as a short-term rental, they just renew, and there's an affidavit in that code section that they have to fill out saying that their short-term rental still is in compliance with their inspection that was done by city staff.
great, I'd love to hear that there is no renewal fee. And the question about just the conditional use permits already in place, I just wanted to know if we had the ability to grandfather those in so they didn't have to pay that initial $200 one-time fee.
Yep,
Since all
so
the work's
since-
already been done.
Yep, since they are already acting as an approved short-term rental, they would get a new number, so it'd still have the same conforming STR 25001, and then all we would need to make sure is that they're conforming with the life safety standards in the new code.
Great, and that permit can be applied online on the city page?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Wright?
Ariel, can you tell me what process is going to be put in place to ensure compliance with a reapplication? Have we thought about how that's going to work?
Yeah, so they'll get a notification, your short-term rental application renewal is coming up in the next 30 days. In the code, we have it that it's supposed to be done by December 31st of that calendar year. But in the code, it has a 30-day kind of grace period where it needs to be done by January 31st of the next year. And if they don't, then we revoke their approved permit. And then I've been in contact with both Expedia, who runs VRBO, and then Airbnb has a city portal page. And so you can work with both of them to make sure the compliance is being done.
Okay, but they definitely are going to be notified. They will
Yes.
get a paper record.
Yep,
that
our
this is
online
due.
system, there's an automation portion where you can put in, the expiration date is December 31st of current year, send email notification 30 days prior. And so we'd
Okay.
be working with that automation.
And so it's going to be within the calendar year. It doesn't matter at which point in the calendar year they apply.
Correct, since there's no annual renewal fee, we just made it easier for that kind of end of calendar year, so it's easy to remember.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember Gaither? Okay, I'd entertain a motion then.
Move to approve resolution number R-16-25.
Second.
There's a second. With that, if you could read the resolution.
Resolution number R-16-25, a resolution creating a fee schedule for short-term rental applications in review effective June 1, 2025.
With that, on to discussion. Councilmember Gaither?
I would just like to discuss the option of a moratorium, maybe a 90, 60-day, 180-day moratorium for new STRs to help staff get their, get our procedures in place, get our inspectors ready to go, do some outreach while we iron out any remaining kinks and, pave the way for the new council members that are coming in. So maybe if there's no fee for new endorsements, or STRs, maybe that would be a nice add-in. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but in some cases, commercial buildings are given free inspections, right? That happens? No? Okay.
I can't speak to that.
Okay.
I would just say that the effective date is June 1, and so I think a moratorium would be a completely different agenda item that's not before the council.
Councilmember Fajarin?
What would be the effect if council makes some amendment that makes the effective date fit within the time frame of a moratorium that Councilmember Gaither's talking about.
I guess the question is, should staff be setting things for January 1? Because there's been a lot of talk about new council members coming on and waiting for them. Is that what the intent is?
That wasn't my intent. I was just asking for clarification. You pointed out the effective date. If there is a wanting to move this down the road a few months, would the path to be change the effective date?
You could, but like we had with the right-of-way permits that I mentioned multiple times, it's a gift of public funds. If some people are having to pay it, some people aren't, it covers staff time. I think it would be a gift of public funds, but again, that's for the council to decide what they want to do.
Thank you. I'm just asking for clarification about if we were to bring it forward, so I appreciate the insight.
Any other discussion? Not?
I just want to note that that wasn't my intent either. It was to just think about how we can get our procedures in place, do outreach, and iron out the remaining kinks. That's why I mentioned it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Not?
Is any other council member, I just want to make sure that we're talking about this without moving forward. Does any other council member have any feelings about that?
I think at this point, we need to implement the fee to put everything in line and not have something kind of hanging out there. And, my assumption is we've ironed out the kinks. But it doesn't give people a lot of time before June 1, so we do need to let people know.
Other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Council passes. Next item on the agenda is executive session. At this time, the City Council will adjourn to executive session pursuant to RCW 42-30-110-1I to discuss with legal counsel representing the city matters related to agency enforcement actions and to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency potential litigation concerning litigation that has been specifically threatened to which the agency, the governing body, or the member acting in official capacity is or is likely to become a party. II litigation that the agency responsible believes will be commenced or against the agency and the governing body or the member acting in official capacity, or II litigation or legal risks of a proposed action or current practice the agency has identified when public discussion of the litigation or legal risk is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency. The executive session is expected to last 15 minutes. If it becomes necessary to extend the executive session, someone will return to announce the anticipated additional time needed for council. The council will return following the executive session. And we will start the executive session at 7:40, so in 2 minutes.
Hold on, before you pay.
We're extending the executive session another 15 minutes. We're extending the meeting, executive session, another 10 minutes. We're extending executive session another 10 minutes. We're extending executive session another 10 minutes. We extended executive session another 5 minutes. We're extending executive session another 5 minutes. We're extending executive another 9 minutes. We'll extend executive session another 6 minutes.
Motion to adjourn?
Seconds first. It's 9:05. We're bring the meeting back into order. With that, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Okay.